caught Mike's at the bag picking teeth from his skull and playing with his tongue. He's all sick and everything.
This is Kyle Hooper. In 2011, he was arrested as a suspect in the murder of Seath Jackson. The police would arrest 5 teenagers that day. 15-year-old Seath was tortured and killed in a cabin in the woods. His fate was much worse than death, and it was all because of his psychopathic ex-girlfriend, Amber Wright.
Maybe people are gonna hate us for this.
I hate my life.
This is our life now.
Oh my God.
Yeah. After torturing their former friend, these teens were crying for themselves. Seath Jackson's case is gruesome, tragic, and outrageous, considering the killer's ages. This is the full story of Seath Jackson and Amber Wright. Today's story begins in Bellevue, Florida, with an all-around good guy named Seath Tyler Jackson. He was born on February 3rd, 1996, to parents Sonia and Scott, and he grew up with 2 older brothers. Everyone remembered Seath as a kind soul and an energetic, sporty person who loved animals and four-wheeling with his family. His biggest dream was to become a UFC fighter. During high school, Seath started dating Amber Wright. She was the same age as him, and they seemed to have the same interests. But we all know how teenage love can be. It burns hard, but it burns fast. And once the butterflies go away, the common ground disappears in the blink of an eye. 3 months into dating Amber, Seath decided he'd had enough. In March 2011, he broke up with her. Amber was devastated, and she started hating Seath for it. Since he wasn't going to change his mind, Amber took to the internet to humiliate Seath in front of all his friends. This didn't sit well with Seath, and he engaged in a dramatic Facebook feud. Seath, Amber, if you would go back and read some of the shit I wrote, I said I was done with you, and you should be done with me. We both just need to let all this shit go. Yeah, we split. Yeah, it hurt. But I'm over this dumb shit with me and you, and I just ain't going to let Mike have his cake and eat it too. Amber, how are you done with it when you continuously write shit about me, talk shit about me, hate on me? So learn the definition of done. So who was the Mike that Seath mentioned? As it turns out, there was a second boy in Amber's life, 18-year-old Mike Bargo. As you can see from the pictures, he was quite different from Seath. He was overly confident, aggressive, and addicted to a long list of drugs. Although Amber never admitted to having a romantic relationship with Mike, Seath was pretty sure that they had a side story, even when the two of them were dating. That was one of the reasons he didn't want to date Amber anymore. Well, once Seath called off the relationship and Amber accepted it, she did go public with Mike. Sadly, Seath wasn't the better man either. He was angry at her, even more convinced she'd cheated on him. So he started calling her names online. But Amber seemed happy with Mike, and after a while, Seath seemed to calm down and move on too. On April 17th, 2011 though, Seath received a message from Amber. Hey, can you talk? You said you wanted to talk. Well, I kinda need to talk to you about us wanting to work things out. What do you mean? Can you please call me, like, now? Yeah, sure. Hey, my friend Charlie is coming with. I've been telling her everything, me and you, and she's coming because I need her to help me through this. Is that okay? But don't tell anyone what's going on because I wanna make sure we can work things out before anyone knows. Amber, if you have me jumped, I will never give you the time of day. This was a month after their breakup, so Seath was wondering why Amber would want to talk, especially since she seemed happy with Mike. He warned her not to have him jumped, to which she replied, I could never do that to you. I just want me and you back. So he made his way to a small mobile home in Summerfield, belonging to one of Amber's friends. That night, Seath disappeared. On April 18th, 2011, Seath's parents were panicking. They hadn't heard from their son for almost 24 hours, and this was not like him. He was only 15 and always in contact with them or his brothers. He hadn't told them about spending the night somewhere else either. It was really worrying he hadn't come home that night. So, a day into Seath's disappearance, his parents reported him missing. When his mom spoke to the police, she remembered a strange incident. That night, she heard Mike confronting Seath at their own home. He shouted at her son, I have a bullet with your name on it. When the detectives looked up the name, Mike Bargo, they found an ample theft record. He was also openly carrying a gun and bragging about his violent outbursts. Apparently, Amber had told Mike that Seath had been her. It was her way to get back at him for tainting her name online. Ever since then, Mike had declared open war on Seath. A few days after the incident at Seath's home, Mike and his friend, Kyle Hooper, challenged Seath to a fight at Charlie Eli's home, a trailer home in Summerfield. That day, Seath turned up at the house, but heard a gunshot and left. So the police had already had some people they needed to speak to. But someone else spoke to the police around the same time. Kyle, Mike's friend and Amber's half-brother, had told their mother some details about the night before. They were so disturbing that their mother decided to call 911. Immediately, 4 teens were arrested: Amber, Charlie Eli, Kyle Hooper, and Justin Soto. Mike was already on the run. The interrogation lasted for 5 hours, and it shed a lot of light on what happened to Seath, as well as on the other teens' characters. People who claimed they were best friends were now turning on each other and complaining about wasting their time at the police station.
So what's the issue?
Initially, Justin acted like he didn't even know about anything, even though he lived at Charlie Eli's house, and the detectives knew this. So she started by asking him about his tattoos and led him to the mushroom on his leg.
Yeah, this is my last one. I have a mushroom right here.
Oh, that's a new one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are all the scratches about?
I was walking through the woods and some vines got a hold of it, and like 3 or 4 vines wrapped around my leg, and I went to go walk in it.
When the detective pushed Justin toward the real reason he was there, he kept saying he didn't care, as he was innocent. But she pointed out that he'd said he was nervous about being at the police station, so she knew he was lying. Finally, he started opening up.
They said an incident happened.
Okay. With who?
I guess freaking something about some kid that I don't even know who the hell he is. And
Yeah, you do. Who is he?
his name's Seath or something like that. And supposedly, I guess he got shot or whatever.
Justin also said that it was Amber and Charlie who invited Seath to the mobile home to talk some things over. Meanwhile, the girls weren't as cooperative. Charlie was the first to crack, still working hard to hide what had truly happened.
Sunday night, Amber and I walked up because her boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend, was Seath, and they wanted to work things out, so we met him up.
Amber, who was 15 at the time, was interrogated next to her mother. Needless to say, she acted innocent and compliant, but in reality, she wasn't giving a lot of real information.
Well, me and him were already talking on the phone.
Me and him.
Seath.
Okay, you and Seath. Did Seath call you or did you call Seath?
Well, he had called me a couple days before that and I didn't answer.
Okay.
So I called him that night.
Amber also lied to the detective about Seath being abusive to her.
How was your relationship with him?
Not the best.
Tell me why you say not the best.
We'd always fight. He'd always hit me and cheat on me and all that kind of
So he
stuff.
was physically abusive to you?
Yes, Jay.
But if Seath had been abusive to Amber, why did she contact him to make up? She told the detective she wanted to be friends with him again, so they'd met up and chatted for half an hour. Then, according to the girls, Seath started arguing with his mom through text, left, then came back to Charlie's house 1 hour later.
Did Seath call you before he came down?
No, ma'am.
So he just showed up an hour later?
Yeah.
When you came back, did you talk to your brother or Michael about what Seath had said or that you guys had had a conversation? Did they know?
No, they didn't know what we talked about.
Amber then said that Seath entered the house and sat on a chair. Then Kyle hit him with a large stick.
Me and her sitting by each other on the couch, and out of nowhere, Kyle just gets up and hits him.
Both girls claimed they ran away from the living room and hid in the bathroom, so they didn't witness the attack.
Where was
And
he at?
Kyle said, "Get the fuck out." And he went out that way, and we heard Mike's door hit something, and Mike came out, and we heard gunshots.
The next morning, when Amber and Charlie came out of their room, the whole house smelled like bleach.
I had a bottle of bleach on the counter, but that's not there.
So you had bleach and it's gone
Yeah.
now?
And Mike came into the room, and he said, "I swear if you guys open your mouth about anything about last night, I'm gonna come after you guys."
The first inconsistency came when the girls talked about Mike. Charlie said Mike left early in the morning, while Amber said he stayed in his room all day. Meanwhile, the detective got Justin to open up about potential motives for Seath's murder.
I guess he had some problems with some other kid, and
What kind of problems?
well, I think his name is Mike. Actually,
I knew you would remember. I had faith in you. When did you
It was
first meet
like-
Mike?
Oh, I met him like 2 years ago.
Justin described Mike as some other kid and acted like he barely knew him. Then he admitted he's known Mike for 2 years and that they even lived together. Slowly but surely, the detectives were using the teenagers' lies against them. When you confront a suspect about their dishonesty, they are more likely to crack. Remember how Kyle talked to his mom about Seth's disappearance? Well, after his interrogation, the detectives brought him to his mom again, and watch what happens.
Both your kids are in a thing for murder.
Number 2?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
What we told you was in the storm. I mean, it was like everything was planned.
Approach everybody?
Everybody.
Yeah, Kyle just confessed on camera to first-degree murder and implicated all 5 people who were at Charlie's house that night.
We're gone.
Kyle even told his mom that his stepfather, James Haven III, was also guilty of aiding a fugitive. The detectives listened to this whole interaction. Kyle had no idea they were being recorded in the waiting room too. He'd only found out when he was invited back into the interrogation room.
This is your one and only last chance to correct any discrepancies you may have of the story that you told me. Okay? Want to start fresh?
No. Man, I'm scared. I really am.
Kyle, I'm sure you are. Okay?
I've never been to. I don't want to go.
Kyle explained that he'd gotten into a fight with both of his parents that weekend. First, he fought with his dad, so he sold his laptop to get cash for a month's rent at Charlie's place. That's when he fought with his mom for making this decision. So he visited his stepfather, James, for emotional support. James then dropped him off at Charlie's house. That Sunday afternoon, another boy was visiting Charlie's house when Mike started dropping uppers.
And then Mike, he was like getting all into it. He went in the house. I guess he was doing some pills or whatever. And, he was.
What kind of pills, Mike?
I'm not sure. They were white pills.
Where'd he get them?
There's no telling where he gets any of this stuff. I don't know. He don't tell me nothing.
Mike was an aggressive person, and the pills made him even worse.
Somebody brought up the name Seth, and he's like, man, I want to go on a killing spree tonight. He's like, I just want to. And he's like, you guys down? And I told him no. I told him I don't.
When he said you guys down, who's he talking to?
Like,
you and him?
Me, Amber, Charlie, Roach. Okay.
Who's Roach now?
The guy Justin Soto.
By now, there were enough inconsistencies in the interrogation that the detectives could use the prisoner's dilemma tactic. This means that they convince each suspect that everyone else is talking and implicating them. They could choose to believe the detective and speak, or call the bluff and continue the lies as a way to protect the group. But if they're the only ones lying, they're easier to convict, as they'll take the blame from everyone else. The tactic was super effective on Justin.
Wow, I know what happened to Seth. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, floor's yours.
Justin started talking about the events of April 17th, just like Kyle. Meanwhile, Kyle gave a huge clue into Seth's murder.
He's like, all you gotta do is find him and get him on the way down here and everything like that. And he didn't want Amber to call him off of the phone or text him. He didn't want nothing to have her or Charlie to have nothing to do with it.
Mike wanted to go on a killing spree that could have targeted Seth, but he didn't want to involve the girls. It was Amber's decision to lure Seth to his death. Amber really wanted to kill her ex.
Your brother told me everything.
Okay.
So you can sit there and you can continue to lie. I'm gonna walk out and treat you like a piece of garbage. Or you can sit here and treat me with the respect that I treated you with. Okay? And you can tell me the truth.
That's not true.
But according to Amber, it was all Mike that convinced her to lure Seth that night.
He was like, you should call Seth.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, for what? He was like, act like you're gonna make up with him. And I was like, for what, Mike? He's like, because I'm gonna kill him. And I was like, why are you gonna do that? He's like, because I'm tired of him.
Amber shifted the blame onto Mike, but she confessed to the premeditation. Kyle, on the other hand, confessed to hating Seth for a long time.
I really hated Seth. And there was time, because my ex-girlfriend, I found him in the bed with my ex-girlfriend, and I really didn't like that, and I loved her. But I really didn't want to go out and kill the kid.
Indeed, that spring, Kyle was dating a girl called Alyssa, and one day he found out Alyssa had slept with Seath. Around the same time, Mike was convinced that Seath had been abusive to Amber. It's easy to see how the boys riled each other up, trash-talking Seath for hours on end every day. Kyle removed himself from the planning crew, but he also implicated Amber and Mike as equally guilty.
Well, Mike was talking about it. He's like, listen, he's like, I'll do it. And believe it or not, Amber wanted it done. Amber don't want nothing to do with him. Amber wanted him dead and gone. He deserved it.
Did he really believe Seath deserved to be killed? Or was it a desperate attempt to make himself appear less guilty? Well, blaming the victim never pans out great for the attacker.
It's whatever. And Amber agreed to it. Everybody was agreeing to it.
So did Soto agree?
Huh?
Soto? Roach?
Everybody agreed.
He
Like I
agreed?
said, everybody agreed.
Amber agreed?
Mm-hmm. And Jay,
Charlie agreed?
Mm-hmm.
Why did the detective go through all the names one by one? Easy. Kyle now implicated all of them in first-degree murder. Indeed, it's not just the person who pulls the trigger that's responsible for it. If 4 other people are aware of what's going to happen and no one does anything about it, then they're just as guilty. Luckily for the police, Kyle didn't know this. He kept saying that Mike agreed to take the blame for the action and they were just witnesses. Except Kyle was way more than just a bystander. When Mike said this is it, Kyle went over to Seath and hit him on the head.
I hit him over the stick, the head.
Where was Seath when you hit him?
He was in the chair.
Okay.
And I hit him over the head with the stick, and it broke 3 times on him.
Kyle's confession helped the other detectives implicate the teens.
At no time did you ever say, when Kyle hit Seath across the head with this stick, board, or whatever this object was, what the hell are you doing? What's going on? If you didn't know what was going on. You see the picture I'm painting now?
Now he had Charlie concerned. She couldn't convince him that she wasn't part of the plan if she never tried to stop Kyle when he first attacked Seath.
If you and I are sitting in this room, and whomever's sitting over here, and I just start beating the hell out of him, aren't you gonna want, what's going on? You never said that. You know why? You know why?
Yeah.
Why?
So I knew something might have happened.
Exactly.
Toward the end of the interrogation, the full details of Seath's murder were revealed, and guys, they are gut-wrenching. Seath entered the mobile home and sat on the couch, expecting a chat with Amber. Mike gave the go-ahead, and then Kyle hit him over the head with a stick. Seath immediately stood up, so Kyle hit him harder and harder until he couldn't stand up anymore. But suddenly, Kyle's stick broke, and Seath made one last attempt to save his life. He stood up and tried to run away, but Justin came in with another stick and hit him some more.
And then he was trying to go through the kitchen, and Mike shot him back twice with a gun.
But Mike didn't stop there. Everyone else got scared. The girls ran into Charlie's room, and the boys tried to pull him back. But Mike kept shooting Seath, even though he was on the floor in a pool of blood.
And Roach grabs him like this, and Seath on the ground, and has him choked. And I don't know what he did to his knee, but he kind of messed up his knee, and Roach rolled over.
Who messed up his
A
name?
Roach,
Okay.
Soto, and he rolled over, and Mike come up and shot him in the head, and that's when it was over.
The terror was finally over for Seath, but for everyone else, this is when the horror begins. They finally realized the gravity of what they had done, and they started panicking about the body.
Mike's like, man, grab him, you gotta grab him, Kyle. We can't have nobody, we gotta grab him. And I was scared, I was freaking out, and I'm like, okay.
The 3 boys picked up Seath and carried him up the stairs. At this point, he was still breathing. Then the boys laid him down in the bathtub, and Mike went into another frenzy, punching and shooting Seath some more. At some point during his second torture episode, Seath's heart gave in.
I come in, and Mike's trying to break his kneecaps to put
Is
him
he
in a
dead
hog
at this
tie.
point, or is he
Yeah,
still?
he's completely dead.
And guess what? The girls weren't in the room all night. In fact, they went upstairs to see what the boys were doing to Seath's body. So Mike threatened them with his gun.
That's when Mike walked in the room with his gun in his hand. And he was like, I love you both. But if you say anything, I'll kill you both.
It gets even more gruesome after this. The three boys then set out to clean the house and burn Seath's body. They stuffed Seath in a blue sleeping bag and carried him out into the backyard, where Justin had prepared a wood fire. By the way, that's how he got the scratches. Seath was dead and stuffed inside a bag, but Mike was still in a frenzy, hitting him with a shovel.
The guy's completely dead and he's still hitting.
Just how much of Mike's behavior was dictated by the pills he'd taken? Were his psychopathic tendencies enough? To his friend's shock, he was getting an almost sexual kick out of mutilating Seath's body. The next morning, he still wasn't done. He went into the backyard to retrieve whatever remains were left after the fire.
You know, we're just going around there. Mike's in the bag picking teeth from his skull and playing with his tongue. He's all sick and everything.
Sheesh. Finally, Mike put Seath's remains into paint buckets. He weighed the buckets down with cinder blocks and then threw them inside a flooded quarry in Ocala, Florida. As soon as they got this information, the detectives sent out a team to retrieve Seath's remains. They found most of them were inside the quarry, while some were still in Charlie's backyard. All 5 teens were charged with first-degree murder. 2 things were left to do. 1, did the teens have any remorse for their actions?
What were you thinking about getting Seath up there?
I don't know, I wasn't thinking at the time.
Did you just hate Seath that bad?
I didn't hate him, I was hurt.
I just wanted just to get my life together. I was planning on going to the military and everything, but it's out of the picture now. Well, my life pretty
Why
much is
didn't
out
you
of the
just,
picture.
let me ask you this. You know, you're telling me you wanted to get your life straight, this, that, the other.
I don't
You know,
like-
that's all bullshit. Because
I
if you
just
wanted to
don't
get
like-
your life straight, you know what you would have done? You would have not participated in this, and you would have called the cops and said, this is what's about to happen to this kid.
This is what makes the case even more tragic. None of the teens showed actual regret for killing Seath. All of them instead complained that their life was over, all the while pointing their fingers at each other. And none of them ever attempted to stop Mike or call 911.
You know how many people are gonna hate us for this?
I hate my life.
This is our life now.
Oh my God, man.
Probably the most disgusting self-pity ever caught on camera.
Yeah, but it's not our fault.
Hell, I don't even like the kind of people, and I'm one of them now.
I don't
And
need.
I didn't even do anything.
Yeah, luring your ex-boyfriend to his death with a lie is nothing. The second thing left to do was, of course, arrest Mike. Throughout Sunday and Monday, Mike was with James Williams, his girlfriend's dad. James had been offering Mike shelter when Mike told him a version of the events from Sunday night.
He said, look, I got in an altercation in Ocala, the place I was living, got into a fight, and they threw me out of the house and I needed a place to stay for a few days while things cooled down.
When James pressed him further, Mike said that Seath had violated Amber and he had tried to kill him, so he shot him 8 times. Apparently, that's when James convinced Mike to turn himself in. But before he could do that, the police surrounded James's house. He was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Amber, Charlie, Kyle, and Justin were sentenced to life in prison. Mike Bargo was sentenced to death. Throughout his trial, he denied his guilt and was arrogant towards the prosecution.
Isn't it true that Seath broke up with Amber because she found out that you two had slept together?
Not to my understanding. You want me to answer that?
You already did.
James Havens III was also charged with the illegal disposal of a body. He drove the crew to the quarry on Monday when they threw away Seath's remains. He was sentenced to up to 30 years in prison. To this day, every one of the teenagers is still in prison, but Charlie. In 2020, she appealed the sentence and took a guilty plea for second-degree murder. She was freed in 2020. Amber even tried to get a retrial in 2014, claiming her rights weren't properly read to her during her interrogation. Amber was sentenced to life in prison a second time. Shockingly, she still shows no remorse for her actions. Meanwhile, Seath's family will have to live with a wound that can never heal.
Words cannot describe the pain and suffering you have inflicted on our family. You have taken so much from so many. The loss of our son has been the most difficult thing we have ever had to bear. It has changed our lives and the way we think, feel, and live. Our lives will never be the same, as we will never see our son grow up or have children of his own.
How can you move past this when no one is taking responsibility for it? Hey, thanks for watching. What do you think about this case? Let me know in the comment section, and before you leave, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. See you next time, and stay safe.